one day I decided that I'm going to fix the blender, although there was absolutely nothing wrong with the blender. And it never worked. I got electrocuted. What I really like about kind of the North American market and Canada, there is no lack of opportunities. Khaled, Zaky, AWS. Thank you for joining us for this podcast today. We really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity for us to kind of dive more into your background, learn a little bit more about you. I know recently, in the more recent past, we had the opportunity to dive into a course with you, and it was a great experience for us. And it kind of left us at a spot where we just felt like we needed more than what we just had at that moment. And, we thought it would be a great opportunity to connect with you again. But we also were very much like we admire you as a person. So I think it would be a great opportunity to also learn more of the personal side of things. Correct. So, we're really excited to have you. So
we just want to know you more, know you better.
Yeah, so I did not grow up in Toronto. I was born and raised in Egypt. I moved here about 16 years ago. So that was my thing. But yeah, growing up curious, it's interesting. I kind of try to go back. So my grandfather was an engineer as well. So he was an electrical engineer. And I always kind of used to see him fixing things all around the house. So I tried just copying and doing the same stuff. He's installing a power plug or whatever. I kind of do the same thing and it never worked. I got electrocuted, so learned from that.
I have a similar story.
One day I decided that I'm going to fix the blender, although there was absolutely nothing wrong with the blender. But I just took it apart, not being able to put it back, and then got yelled at. He helped me put it back together, and then I learned from that. Yeah. So it's kind of these experiences is kind of it's more like, I don't know if it was curious, but I think curious is the great spin that you could put on this, but it was breaking things. Yeah. But I learned from these experiences from the bad outcome of being electrocuted or reading a blender.
But we want to start with your journey. You're a product manager now, but you started way back in software development. You had your stint with banks and telecom and all that stuff. Anything that you could tell us from where you want to start?
Yeah, no, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate this and appreciate that we got to reconnect again after the course wrapped up. So yeah, definitely, I'm more than happy to talk about my background and experience and share the learnings. I'm still learning myself. I like to always kind of think about it's a kind of lifelong learning journey. So yeah, I personally, I started kind of my academic career. I think academically I studied software engineering. So I graduated from a software engineering program. So, and through that, I got into the industry, wanting and willing to be a software engineer. So I took on internships and roles in software development and software testing roles, working at companies like BlackBerry, or what it was called Research and Motion at the time. So I had an internship there and other software development shops as well. Then right out of university, I kind of got into still in the technical realm. So I joined Rogers Communications I was fortunate enough that I was given kind of the ability to spend my first year at Rogers to rotate across different teams. Not as an intern, as a full-time employee. I was already started there as a full-time employee, but I was given the opportunity to kind of selected as a group of people to explore the organization, take a 10,000-foot view of what does network engineering do, what does product do, what does solution architecture do, what does operations teams do, and things like that. So kind of get a feel of the whole organization as I kind of embark on my career with Rogers. Really enjoyed my time there. I spent a lot learning a lot about different aspects. Was intrigued, of course, by technical roles because that was my kind of strongest suit and interest and what I wanted to kind of improve and develop on. So had different roles in network engineering and software development as well, trying to automate processes and automate tooling and things like that, and work with field engineers and field technicians My role with Rogers as well was kind of more on the enterprise side of things. So a lot of people associate Rogers Communications as kind of the consumer facing cell phone company, but I was kind of more on the enterprise where they did offer also networking and interconnection solution to organizations and enterprises like networking solutions, data center solutions, voice over IP, and solutions in that space that serve businesses. How did I get in product? The answer was essentially at Rogers. So at Rogers, when I did my rotation, one of the teams that I rotated with was the product team. So I was kind of lucky that I got introduced to kind of like product and product managers. Honestly, I knew nothing about product at the time, but kind of got to know what they do, what does the day-to-day look like, what their interactions look like. It's so funny, like when I worked on other teams with the network engineering, solution architecture, the mystery was always there. What do product people do? So it's not a myth, it's truth. A lot of people actually have misconceptions about product, don't know much about what product managers do, but the role brings a lot of value, and it's kind of the glue that kind of makes a lot of things happen to bring products to life to customer. So I was very intrigued and inspired by that. Did not yet develop kind of the interest to be a product manager, but I think that grew when I transitioned internally from technical roles, deep technical roles, into like solution architecture. It's kind of, you could think of it as a more of a sales engineer role. That kind of puts me in a position where I have the technical knowledge and know-how and expertise to engage in enterprise technical discussions on behalf of Rogers with sales teams to help kind of craft and put together technical solutions for customers. The learning that I had there was like, we always had a suite of products, always positioned a suite of products, and we heard feedback from customers, but we always kind of converged on that what we could offer. I've always left back with kind of like, what about that feedback that we heard from customer? What about these opportunities or untapped opportunities that we heard? How to go about it? And that's what was, you know what, like I know my product friends that I did my rotation with. So it's kind of tried to kind of bridge a connection there. They appreciated that feedback, but over time I start kind of to grow the interest as like, you know what, I actually want to action that ever growing backlog that I'm throwing for these product managers, and maybe kind of see things like I pull in feedback from the field, but also like how does that translate into like a working, turn into a product. Yeah. So I started kind of to develop that interest. And maybe, of course, like, you know, a lot of people ask, how do you get into product, or how did you get into product? There was like, I had a personal, professional interaction with the product team that has kind of developed a relationship that showed kind of the interest, the curiosity, and interest in the role, curiosity about the customer, all these things. So it had some of the qualities that they were looking for, and then showed the willingness that I kind of like, you know, I would like to come on board on your team. And through that surfaced when the opportunity came along. The team as, of course, there's a junior team member, the expectation that I kind of like shadow other product managers, see how they go about their day-to-day understanding, and kind of like over a period of time, like I would basically own my full product line or product offering and go about essentially enhancing it, developing it, and owning it end to end from there. And maybe that's kind of like how it kind of essentially came from, like, you know, a software engineer into like growing into a product manager. The rest is kind of all product management. Like when I kind of got into from telecom to financial services, now tech, several product roles there, and could.
I think I had an interesting quest. Before that, I just got curious from what you said, like telecom to bank to tech, and maybe like was it like a startup where you started as a developer?
Yeah, I was developer, like different and maybe roles, mostly like either within the companies that we're working in, like at Rogers, or even through internships, like at other places, like other smaller companies or other organizations. So yeah, mostly software engineering roles.
How did you choose this transition though from like different industries and then probably converging in tech at this point. What was that
Yeah,
drive?
and maybe I think part of it is luck and interest. So I think the part luck is kind of like when opportunities come along. I think you kind of evaluate it and you kind of look at it as like, um, is that what I want to do? Is that what I'm developing interest in? Is that where I want to go next? And maybe I think it's kind of that's kind of like the reason I went to telecom is kind of like basically like telecoms here in Canada are big known brands. You see them everywhere. I get intrigued by this stuff, so I kind of always wanted to be part of that. Really my transition to banks, like it's kind of like as I spent more time, I started kind of to understand kind of and maybe known fact, like a lot of money. They want to make investments. It's a long-standing industry, ripe with opportunities to also like change and evolve. It's like 100-year-old industry. Some of those organizations have legacy systems. People could look at this as an opportunity to transform and evolve. Yeah. Some people think about it, it's like an uphill battle. I like the kind of balance of both because you could see like, a 100-year-old bank is kind of a big undertaking. It was something I wanted to take. So yeah, like the part left that the opportunity surfaced, the part interest I had was kind of like, like I like this challenge. It sounds something I have no clue how to go about it. And I feel like and maybe in my career was kind of like being in a spot where I have a lot to learn and I have a lot of opportunity and a lot to contribute. I think these were kind of the biggest learning opportunities and that like basically help springboard your career.
It's so amazing to like kind of understand like, a lot of that journey and like how you went from like software development to like product and like also like experiencing all of these multiple different industries, as you mentioned too. I mean, that's a lot of diversity there and somewhat like something I relate to as well in the past, although not software. But how was it to keep up with that constant learning and developing and, staying up to date essentially? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, it's actually, it's never, one thing that comes really valuable in all this is like being curious and staying curious and always questioning things. I'm always like one that's like kind of like if there's a beta test for any new product or things out there, like I always find myself like I always want to try new things. I always kind of like to push the edge of things and try to break things and all that sort of stuff. I think that type of mentality helps a lot. The fortunate thing in technology that the industry itself help you with that. The industry itself is not static at all. It's always ever evolving. What you knew about this industry last year is not the same what you should know this year to be successful. It's always ever evolving. And when I say ever evolving, it's the practices, the mechanisms, the technology, the way people do things, like the way people used to program and what languages they used to use like 5-10 years ago. It's very, very different than what people use today. I think the advent of like AI technologies and all that sort of stuff, like it's not new stuff. Like we've heard about machine learning and AIs, but I think the applications that we're uncovering now with generative AI and other things, it's just kind of making people kind of question what opportunities we have with this thing. How can we unlock more potential and all that sort of stuff? I think being curious, being hungry, how can you kind of capitalize on these opportunities is what really helps. Personally speaking, I've always kind of wanted to see kind of what's the latest and greatest out there. How can I be at the front line of learning this thing and testing it out and all that sort of stuff. So usually like it's not kind of to ride the bandwagon or the buzzwords or all that sort of stuff. Not that at all. What I mean is essentially kind of see what's like the latest and greatest and up and coming and try to get involved with that. Usually kind of the early adopters or the early curious people, things like that, that the ones that would have the longest runway to learn and probably get a head start. So yeah, I think they kind of that's kind of how I stay ahead sometimes.
There are companies out there that are doing really good products, and there are companies out there, and a lot of them we talked about it over the past few weeks as well, and the roles seem to be very different as well within the product space when it comes to like how people are actually approaching. And this is a huge debate like right now in the industry, particularly especially in the product space, is that, what are they working to? Is it just about the outcomes, or is it more about the valuable side of things? And then also continuously being in that innovative space. It's like being a startup within a startup per se. Like, so how does that look like from your perspective?
I think empathy and resilience, as a product manager, to be successful, there's a big part of it is empathy, and you develop empathy two ways. A lot of it is with your customers, and a lot of it with your internal stakeholders, the engineers, the builders, people that are kind of bringing things to life. I think that's very important because the biggest misconception around the role is that, we're going to hire a product manager and the product manager will help us set direction. Mm-hmm. Reality is product managers don't dictate roadmaps. Reality is product managers are not idea generators even. You're more like a curator. You're more kind of like, you help curate ideas. You help kind of collect the best ideas. You help make sense of those best ideas. What's the most valuable, and how can we get everybody aligned on like one vision and march together towards that? But also it's empathizing with customers, synthesize, like understanding kind of that feedback. How can we go about that feedback and we action it, and go from there. So that's kind of the bit around empathy. Resilience, on the other hand, is kind of, sometimes like, you get tough feedback. Sometimes you get like, good feedback that sometimes you feel like it's not conclusive to like what we do next or what not we do next. Sometimes you kind of face pushback from stakeholders because like they're kind of lacking capacity, lacking resources, lacking funding. Sometimes there's misalignment. So that's the bit about resilience of kind of like, what do you have in your toolkit, from communication tools, influencing strategies, soft skills, all that sort of stuff to help kind of move things along and get people marching towards kind of the right outcome for the customers, and the right outcome for our strategy as an organization as well. So I think that's kind of the two aspects I would say. Like,
for all these years of experience, what do you think is like a core characteristic for someone who's a product manager?
Yeah, I think core characteristic for someone that's product manager, I would say somebody that has a few things. One is essentially great communication skills. As a product manager, you spend a whole lot of your day communicating with stakeholders, trying to get alignment, trying to get people on kind of like, the same page, relay customer kind of expectations, needs, and so on. Somebody that's deeply curious, I think, kind of like as much as communication skills. Second one is kind of deeply curious about kind of like pulling and eliciting and understanding kind of customer problems, customer needs, able to dive deep into those, gather metrics, gather insights, question the status quo, trying to kind of make sure that we're constantly raising the bar when it comes to, like, let's say you're building cybersecurity products. How can we raise the security bar? How can we make sure that the customer experience is still delightful and we're not stepping over that? So it's kind of somebody that's kind of curious about that as well. I think third is domain expertise. I think that's very, very important. As much as like there's a lot of great product managers, but what makes better and greater product managers are people that have domain expertise in the product area that they're in. I think when you look at product, like product as a craft exists across many industries, many roles, many organizations. But what's kind of makes them different is that, again, it's different organization, different needs, and so on.
Talking of resilience, how long do you, we were just having statistics, like, how long do you hold on to something when you run out of steam?
Yeah, that happens quite a lot. Like, I think I would say, like, it's not about running out of steam, but it's sometimes in product, and I think there's kind of like this overly popular term of pivots in product. Sometimes like as humans, sometimes we get too married into our own opinions, our own ideas, all that sort of stuff. And I think what really distinguishes good product managers are people that are kind of able to isolate kind of personal preferences, personal ideas, all that sort of stuff, and go back into reasoning with data, reasoning with customer evidence, all that sort of stuff, collecting these anecdotes and making the right decision to move forward. It's tough to accept failure. But I think if your data, your customers, all that sort of stuff is telling you something, I wouldn't look at it as failure. I would actually try to kind of look at that in itself as success, because you're helping reset direction to the right direction. There's a lot of learning from this. So I think it's the fact of redeeming the failure, or learning kind of like how when you are about to fail, or there's a deliberate pivot that you have to take, what are the lessons learned? How can we not end up here? And since we ended up here, what learning can we unlock from this opportunity to move forward, and all that sort of stuff? I think it goes a long way in make sure that you, one, earn trust. People know that, like that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you don't sail us to this direction again, but also you're doing your due diligence to help set us on the right direction now. So that goes a long way with earning trust. Also, it helps shield you from you help shield the team from blame. For example, like engineers and builders of resources, they're just focusing on what they need to do, and you're kind of like focusing on help kind of set the right direction, help reset direction, if you will.
So is it like the end product and the outcome, is it something that you constantly think about to orient yourself in terms of when do you take this tough calls of dropping something or like pursuing it further?
Yeah, like I think there's a mix of things, like dropping something or what we need to pursue, or all that sort of stuff. You need to be open in this space that everything is open for a change, right? And that's why we constantly reassess priorities as product managers, because we have a time factor, we have a market, we have competitors, we have data that changes and trends and things like that. So I think one good thing is like making sure that you're doing that. And I think as long as you're doing that, you have less opportunity to fail, higher chances to steer your team and yourself and the product and customer expectations towards success.
I know there's always this thing where you are obviously looking at all the data that you're getting from customers as well, but there's that inner optics.
Yeah, I usually like to kind of like things like optics or meeting a date or satisfying some expectations or things like that. Sometimes in the corporate world, these things are important. But as a product manager, I should actually like try to kind of make these things not my main goal.
My main goal is always a happy, delighted, satisfied customer, and making sure that we are putting products with the right quality and the right bar that we want into the market. If we do that right, all other things will actually fall through, and I think people will start to kind of trust and kind of not get too much in your way in terms of dictating what you should do or how you need to satisfy them or things like that. Like I think I would look at it differently. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, being at AWS is like it's a very, when I look at it from an outsider, it seems like a very complex role, because I mean, AWS in its own is a very gigantic piece of Amazon.
Yeah.
And so do you ever feel like being a part of such a massive organization that, how are you sort of trying to, it kind of ties back to the same question, is like being that startup within a startup, essentially coming up with those innovative ideas constantly. Like, how does that feel like? Because you're not starting something from bottom up in that point, but you're having to work within a framework that's already been established to a certain degree. So how does that look like?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I would like to say like I'm very lucky and I'm very fortunate to be part of AWS. It's definitely like a unique place. It's also like even better like to be part of the greater peculiar Amazon culture. Amazon kind of like they have a lot of success in many industries, and AWS is kind of like one of their greatest successes. So yeah, like to that point, like how like innovating within AWS and how teams work and the concept of startup within a startup. Yeah, I think AWS like there is I get there a lot of latitude and a lot of trust to move things forward. And it's not just me, like a lot of people, product managers, and a lot of what we build. That's basically because most of what we build at AWS comes from direct customer feedback. We have a lot of consumers, we have a lot of users that use our platform and services, and a lot of that is essentially like like the internet biggest properties consume AWS, and a lot of it is direct customer feedback. And I think it's just a lot of it is listening, empathizing with the customer, seeing kind of what their needs are, what are their kind of real business problems, what are the real business scenarios, what are the usage patterns, and how and what outcomes you want to drive towards. And I think we have like our really great process that we obsess over, which is kind of working backwards from the customer needs. And I thought kind of essentially, like when I first heard the term working backwards, I was like, what does that even mean? Essentially, it's like kind of setting that kind of customer goal and outcome in mind and working backwards from that to kind of like, before we kind of start kind of writing out any requirements or writing out any specs or designs or anything like that, it's kind of like starting kind of with the customer need or outcome in mind and kind of driving everything from that. And through that, we actually have our own processes, which is, it's kind of consistent across Amazon, I've seen, which is our, what we call or abbreviate as PR-FAQ, or press release frequently asked questions. And essentially, it's kind of like if you want to launch a product, you heard about some great idea or problem or things like that from customers, articulate that as a press release. So let's say we announced it tomorrow to our customers. What would that press release look like? What would we say? What would we be proud of? And how we would quote the customers, how our executives would throw in a quote in there and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like, it's essentially imagining that we're kind of launching that tomorrow. Yeah. What would that announcement look like? And then going through frequently asked questions that would follow up with a press release. So like, how can I, like what are the benefits? How can I sign up? All that sort of stuff. So it's kind of drilling through that. And that would help eventually shape up what turns into requirements, internal discussions, internal arguments, help further refine that. You never write that and then it's kind of gone from D1. You always kind of iterate on it, get feedback from other smart people within the company. It's very collaborative environment, and you iterate on that. So essentially, it's kind of like we start from something, then eventually we get that out for customer with even probably better, higher quality of bar. So that's kind of part of the innovation process.
So say communication, domain expertise, and curiosity. Probably just proud of you on that. Like, do you feel like you already had it, or is it something that you built along the way?
Honestly, I would be lying if I told you I've had it. I usually tell people kind of like you can kind of look at these things as different muscles you train, like similar how you train your muscles at the gym. So I would say kind of
just kind of to what I'm referring to as muscles is kind of like your kind of technical expertise, the ability to craft great UX. And I think the third aspect is probably kind of business skills. So usually product managers that kind of have good business skills, good user experience skills, good technical skills. And with the mix of that, you're able to engage across multiple stakeholders, you're able to engage across multiple audiences that are internal or external, which is direct customers, and able to do all that. Personally speaking, I would say like based on my academics, based on the roles that I had before getting into product, I might have had my technical chops down and had good technical skills, I would say. Business skills, ability to have like UX skills, which is what you need really to assess feasibility of a product or desirability of a product and all that sort of stuff. I wouldn't say I had much practice with that before being a product manager. I would look at that as kind of, like something that I needed to work on. So I think like people as they start their product career is kind of having that self-awareness, like where do you stand? Like some people, for example, come from a UX research background or a business analysis background or project management background. Then they might have their kind of like business skills down, their UX skills down, but maybe not so much their technical. So it's kind of understanding between the three, which one you want to train next and work on that. I would say like I had the self-awareness of understanding, you know what, I need to sharpen my technical skills. I need to sharpen kind of my UX skills to be a really successful product manager. And in addition to that, not lose sight of my technical skills. Again, like the tech space is very challenging. So keep always learning new technology, new trends, new things that are coming, and going back to the developer seat every once in a while to see what does that look like.
Do you love coding?
Yeah, I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. Sometimes it kind of like, makes me look at things differently, I would say. Understand kind of like how computers work, but what's the latest and greatest technologies and what possibilities are out there.
I coded for a bit in my last life for roles, but thought it's usually that kick where you saw something and wonderful.
Not a great coder, right? He's
Chance.
I
I would get
understand,
getting
yeah.
a different role.
I was gonna ask, like, how do you advocate, like, what's the best for the team while you're at it? Like, you're dealing with so many people in your team, and it's sort of like important to obviously be able to not only navigate the more complex times, but also be able to, like, fulfill everybody's like kind of expectations and provide the kind of support. Could you tell me a little bit more about like how that looks like?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the earlier point around empathy, and I think it's kind of directing that internally. Different teams have different motivations, different drivers, different things that excite them and drive them. So I think starting first by understanding what those priorities are, what they have top of mind, what they worry about the most, and how can you satisfy that. For example, I work with a lot of engineers, being part of my role and part of what I build. And software engineers typically, or engineering managers or technical teams, again, by given the role and given what they're doing, they always want to work on the greatest and latest. So making sure that we're kind of giving them the best tools, the latest technology, but also working on kind of exciting stuff that customers want and they want to work on as well. So that's kind of a motivation to keep in mind as product kind of engages with engineering, understanding kind of this, then maybe it might shape up things that we throw their way differently. Another thing that actually kind of shapes up as important is the kind of context switching. So context switching in the world of in engineering is not a great thing, and understanding kind of like if product doesn't have their priorities kind of well distilled down, well prioritized, or all over the place, and we tell them, well, start this, don't finish this, start this now, all that turns into context switching. It might cause churn on your engineering team, so don't be surprised if that happens. So I think just knowing that helps you avoid it, help you make sure that things are well prioritized, well articulated, definitely where we want to go. Like if you're something as simple as building kind of a new flow in our application or website or product or things like that, making sure that the user experience is well fleshed out. Like we have all the text, all the copy, all these things that engineers expect, well thought out, going to the detail. They will enjoy working with you because, like it's kind of pick up and go. That's kind of one thing I would say. Like, again, similar story would go for like support and other teams and things like that. Like one thing that comes to mind, for example, something I'm dealing with right now is making friends with your support people. Like, for example, customer support and operations. Typically, when as product, like we always want to launch new features, want to push new products to market. That does not play the same way with support or operations people, because it might translate for them to higher call volumes, higher touch points. Their teams are not ready, well trained for all that sort of stuff and all of this. So when I say make friends with them, is making sure that they have enough runway and enough heads up, and working and collaborating with them to kind of ensure that they update their standard operating procedures. They train their staff. They anticipate these volumes as they increase, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, engineering support, I could go on that, like marketing, legal, each one would have like their own concerns and motivations.
I'm just curious about one thing. Like, how do you manage higher up in a big org, and how do you keep them, your leaders, informed or keep them believing in this vision?
Yeah. I think I have a personal style when it comes to that. I don't view people as kind of like higher ups or lower down or things like that. I kind of like try to make sure that like as I approach things, it's the same style, it's the same level of kind of respect, and it's the same level of quality, whether it's a junior engineer on the team or whether they are like a super level executive within an organization. Just to make sure that everybody's involved and the same level of information is presented equally. But that doesn't mean that it's the same way to communicate, because of course, like executives have different things that they want to focus on related to metrics, related to revenues, all that sort of stuff. Developers the other way. So don't mix those two things up. But I think it's kind of giving everybody the same level of attention, the same level of respect, the same level of approachability and willingness to be available and all that sort of stuff. It goes a long way. It presents you as a leader, or at least I view that as my personal style. So it might be a good way to go about it. There might be fallacies there. But yeah, like I think kind of higher ups. One thing I would speak about higher ups is essentially making sure that you're also engaging well cross-functionally. Like you don't want to kind of go like higher ups, like it seemed like as you're escalating on others without having kind of alignment conversations and engaging with their teams. Like if it's like an executive in your direct line of reporting, making sure that like you kind of get and receive feedback from everybody along the chain to make sure that they're able to kind of have strong backbone as you kind of go higher within the organization. If you speak to exactly within a different cross function, I've done that quite frequently when I was within a bank, for example, like when I was part of a cloud platform team, engaging a lot with security teams, making sure that before I reach out to security executives that I'm getting their teams aligned, because try to kind of work backward and orchestrate what that executive would do. If you go talk to them, they're probably going to turn around and talk to their teams and make sure that it's okay, what do you guys think about that idea, and what if should we entertain this or not? And you want them when they turn around, they're like, yeah, we already had the discussions, we already contributed. So I think it's kind of marching together towards an outcome and getting people. So yeah, like, and again, it's not like a consistent framework that you can deploy everywhere, but it worked for me.
Okay, while he was checking, I had a question. Outside of work, what is the thing that I know we read about a lot of your hobbies and passion and all that stuff? What are probably some of the things that you're doing and that's actually helping you with your work?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I think what helps me like what helps me with my day-to-day work. I do a lot of things outside of work, but I think the one thing and you two probably are aware of, like I also engage in teaching and things like that. So I'm fortunate to be able to kind of deliver and have been doing that for a few years now, like a product management course here in Toronto. And I think that's kind of an outstanding opportunity that gives me kind of the stage to kind of like share my learnings, be able to kind of like, like speak my mind and share my learnings and what happened today for me at work and how we ran through the challenges and things like that. And thank you both for participating in this class. You probably saw like we get into sometimes deep discussions around some specific topics, and we could get deeper into have an open discussion in a closed room about some specifics and things like that. That is an outstanding opportunity. But honestly speaking and selfishly, I actually learn more from it than actually I contribute to it. Reason being is because people show up to the class, they have very high expectations of what they want to get. They have, again, their careers on the line, they're eager to learn, they're eager to push. So personally helps me to make sure that I bring my best foot forward. The classroom, when I'm giving an advice and mentoring and things like that, I don't take that lightly. I make sure that I'm probably giving something valuable for people, or else like I'm not really doing my job there. There's no point. But sometimes, like, like there's people that come in with high level of seniority in their career, maybe not in product, trying to transition to product. I've had people sit in that class like somebody that's like a CEO, or somebody that's just started their business, or things like that, or somebody that's actually like owns a recruitment firm but recruiting for product managers, and like interesting mix of people end up in this class. And it's kind of puts me in a very uncomfortable position of like, these people probably know more than I do, and I need to make sure that I come in better and better and better. So in some sense, it helps me improve. It helps sharpen my knowledge. It helps improve my experience. It helps me also get a feel of what's going on in the market and what people are getting curious about. And at the same time, it's like I said, like I've been teaching that class for a few years now. It's never the same content. Like the industry's changing and evolving. So I have to kind of come with fresh new ideas, fresh new anecdotes, fresh new examples, and make the course relevant, or else it will die out. So that's one really thing that kind of, it's not really my day-to-day job. It takes my mind out of my day-to-day job. But when I go back to my day-to-day job, I have so much learning. I've done so much sharpening on my skills and things like that, that it reflects in my day-to-day work as well.
Is it a hobby or something that is helping you with your work life too?
Yeah, like I do a mix of things. Some of it is kind of like, for example, like during COVID, I picked up road cycling. I think we kind of were talking about that.
I did exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
I got a nice old Bianchi. I rebuilt it, and I was like, I'm gonna hit the road. It's the best thing to do.
Yeah, like I don't like during COVID. It was interesting times. Like I was like stuck at home. It was interesting. They shut down the gyms, but they kept McDonald's open. So that was that was nothing against McDonald's. So it was just an interesting way to do things. But yeah, like I was kind of like I really wanted to go work out and do things. So I went out running, and then my knees started to hurt. And it's like, okay, that's like high impact, whatever. And I was like, okay, I want something that's fun, enjoyable, and I had a bike. I used to live downtown Toronto, so I was sitting in my balcony. So I picked up that bike and started kind of going on trails here in Toronto, and it helped me lose track of time. I was actually losing track of time, and it was like that 30 minutes turned into an hour, turned into 2 hours, start riding my bike from Toronto all the way to Mississauga.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of like, I was going a distance, but now turned into the obsession of researching lighter bikes and fancier bikes. So you say Bianchi, I got a Cervelo. I went all out and swapped that out, and kind of like the obsession started to grow from there. So turned into like a side hobby that I'm researching kind of bike and bike tech and all that sort of stuff. Okay. And what's kind of the latest power meter, what's the bike meter, and now kind of like how can I obsess over these things? Absolutely amateur, but I turned that into also a good cause where every year I participate in the Right to Conquer Cancer. So I kind of use that. So I use kind of like my road cycling to basically kind of train for the big event.
Nice.
And then my training kind of goes downhill after the big event every year. But that's kind of the idea of it. It's kind of like, make it a hobby, get a good cause out of it, and somehow contribute. So it's great because it keeps me active, it keeps me going. I wish I would get better and do more of it.
It's so interesting because we were talking about this earlier too, and you did say, one of the main things that really is probably crucial to have as a personality is staying curious, right? And it kind of seems like across the board for everything, like even if it's work or not work, like you're constantly curious in that mindset of like, I want to learn, or I want to grow, or something new that you want to pick up essentially.
I got electrocuted, so learn from that.
These experiences is kind of like it's more like, I don't know if it was curious, but I think curious is the great spin that you could put on this. but it was breaking things. But learn from these experiences, from the bad outcome of being electrocuted or breaking a blender, all that stuff.
But it's like, if you look at it from another lens, it's like, the why you would break something or break something open is because you're like, I want to know what's inside it, right? How does this work? Or how does this turn or anything? And it's like, you learn from your mistakes, obviously. And, it's such an interesting...
And to that point, just to kind of bring things back, like that's the whole essence of curiosity and experimentation, which really what drives the product role is kind of being open to kind of tread carefully, fail, as long as it kind of does not deliver like a bad customer experience or anything like that, like at a meaningful scale, something that you could kind of pick up the learning before you scale out your product to the wider audience. And I think kind of like, again, like growing as a child, like kind of breaking things, I've kind of learned and carried forward these lessons. And I think I try to kind of do the same today in my product craft, where I kind of like, whenever there's a failure, back to the kind of earlier conversations, kind of like, where's the data? Where's the metrics? How can we not end up here again? And how can we make that a learning opportunity to make what we do next even better?
Egypt to here, how was that like?
That was it's a big move. It's different culture, different place, different everything. I kind of moved here.
Did not have like kind of direct family. I have my cousins here, things like that. Moved here for university. So kind of study university, finished university, and kind of was like, the idea was like, well, I finished and I'll just go back. That never happened. Finished and kind of got into internships, got into work life, and fast forward, here we are. I think it's kind of like very, very different. I think there was, what I really like about kind of the North American market and Canada, there is no lack of opportunities. Truly kind of like, I won't say the kind of cliche land of opportunity or anything like that, but you really could do anything you want. I think there's enough learning opportunities. There's enough venues to go learn, whether it's kind of boot camps, conferences, events, things like that. If you really want to immerse yourself and absorb a crazy amount of learning, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think this is kind of the unique place that we have here. I think the job market goes through its phases, like whether it's kind of like ups and downs. But I think it's like if people get lucky and they ride these kind of up waves, or even sometimes like able to kind of show some resilience or make the best out of the down waves or things like that, it really matters. For example, like all of us, without an exception, had kind of the down wave with COVID. But I wouldn't look at it as down wave. I picked up new hobbies, new skills that I carry forward.
So what next? What are you looking at? Where do you want to go?
I think I've been very true in career-wise. I'll focus that answer on career-wise. Like, so what's next career-wise?
I think I've been very true about a few things. Like, I love product and I want to stay in product management. I've managed product teams. I've also been an individual contributor as a product manager. I enjoy it both ways. I love working on big, ambitious, and strategic things when it comes to product. That's one true thing. The other thing is, like, I love technical products. You're well aware, I'm currently at AWS. Like, it's a very technical product that serves a lot of technical audiences, from developers, data scientists, engineers, big organizations. I love that stuff a lot. Like, I love doing things at scale, and AWS is all about scale. The other thing is kind of love, which is kind of like staying curious. So I think kind of like understanding kind of where technology is heading next, where are those opportunities, and how can I capitalize the most on it, and go there. I don't shy from challenging stuff. That's why I kind of like, ended up in sectors and industries that I had no background in before. And it wasn't because it's as much as kind of opportunity came along and I went for it. It was because I was deeply curious to learn a new industry and widen my expertise. So likely, I wouldn't go back same industries. I'd likely kind of explore new industries as part of my next. I would like to stay true to my product. I would like to stay true to my technical aspects like cloud technologies and things like that.
I think we're pretty much at the end here, but I think like if there's anything you would like to share, like for us to continuously stay motivated and like being more curious in the product space and continue learning, what would be an advice you could leave us with that would, probably just push us to continue exploring further. I mean, we discussed about it before too. I think we had just like our background is, coming from a slightly different background, not being in soft dev before, what would you say would be your advice, at this point? And considering like there's such a big change in the market, especially with the generated AI as well.
Yeah.
Things seems to be shifting altogether. So
Yeah, I think it's kind of like one big of advice is like, I think roll up your sleeves, like jump into learning how these things are built. Like a lot of people learn about, generative AI and then technical, like, like deep learning or learn about kind of like, AI models and how they're built or trading AI models. If these things sounds like they sound like buzzwords to you, I think it's then go deeper into the topic and skim through Wikipedia pages that maybe, I don't know, bust out like a code screen and follow like a quick tutorial like for a few steps and see where that takes you. I guarantee you it's gonna be tough. Might end up with a headache, but you learn something.
Yeah.
And I think that might lead you somewhere to learn something next. So I think it's kind of getting curious and getting into the weeds is one level to go about it. I think one thing that really matters a lot is community. I found that kind of finding kind of like-minded communities, finding kind of rooms where you could step into where there's a lot of people to learn from and observe and see what they do and learn from their experiences is good. And I think it helped me kind of like sit in these rooms and learn from other people, whether it's kind of being lucky, joining kind of an interesting meeting at work, or even just going out to a conference or things like that. The third thing is kind of like capitalizing on your time. Like I think as much as like my weekends and evenings, I try to kind of keep them busy, but I like to kind of like, I personally, I always say that it sounds weird, but I like to get stuck in traffic because it gives me more podcast time.
Oh, I see.
So it's good. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't mind traffic because I zone out. Like it kind of gives me time to sit. Like if there's a 2-hour podcast, like that was it. And I ended up with a learning opportunity. So turning something kind of might be negative, like traffic, like positive, like learning. I enjoy a lot of these podcasts. I think what you guys are doing here to kind of like absorb some learning and amplify it to a wider audience is such a great thing. And I think you guys should continue doing that. I get a lot of benefit from it. I like kind of podcasts and platforms that share product lessons or product ideas or even general about tech and tech news. I think they personally help me, and I hope others explore that stuff too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, though your time is so valuable, and we really enjoy learning a lot about your story in connection with product as well. I believe it's so interesting because oftentimes it's always an extension to ourselves when we look at careers or whatever we're doing in life, I guess. So it was so great to hear about how you went on this journey and what really built you up essentially to where you're at today. And it's an inspiration to us who are aspiring to essentially obviously follow those footsteps. So thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom, and it's truly appreciated.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. And thanks for having me, and good luck.